Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to open the Architectural Board of Review agenda for November 16th of 2020 and start with our roll call.
Thank you. This is Mary. I will take the roll call. We have Chair Moore,
Here?
Vice Chair Six,
Here.
Board Member Black. So it looks like he's not here yet. We have Board Member Cunningham,
Here.
Board Member Olson,
Here.
and Board Member Whalen.
Here.
And then
All right.
part of the interaction, Mary, it looks like Mr. Black just joined us. So if you could just confirm, Mr. Black, that you have entered.
I have entered.
All right. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay, excellent. All right, so with that, we'll move on to public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on the agenda today. Do we have anybody?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you wish to speak on general items not on the agenda today, you could please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel. You need to click on the hand icon one time and that raises your hand, and that red arrow pointing down is a raised hand. And I do not see anyone who wishes to raise their hand at this time. Mary, did we receive any written correspondence for general comment?
Thank you, Ellen. We did receive one email from Emily Morrill, and it was regarding a project on the last full board agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chair, we don't have anyone else to raise their hands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will close public comment, go on to approval of the minutes for November 2nd. Richard, Richard, I saw your lips moving, but couldn't hear you. So Bob beat you to it, so you can second that.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I noticed on the first item, the medical building, we didn't have hardly any positive comments. Just looking forward to it, etc., to coming back. I guess that's enough. I guess the Planning Commission will read or will watch the video and so forth. It's just, I think it's too late, but next time maybe we should be recognize that we need to add a little bit more than just the project design criteria.
So you're talking about item number 2, is that right?
Cornell's item, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Cornell's item, excuse me. Yeah, all we said was, besides the criteria, we just finds there's no significant issues with the massing, and looks forward to the refinement of the project.
Yeah, there's a couple positive points at the very end, but yeah, we should be aware that of our motions and make sure they're colorful enough to get our point across, right?
Colorful is a good word, thank you. So, but other than that, looks good.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
All right. Thank you. This is Mary. I will take the roll call vote. We have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right. The motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And moving on to consent calendar for November 9th. Get those up.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
All right. Seconded by Leon. Any discussion? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
Yes, thank you. We have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and then for today's consent calendar, let's read those out. Good.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Today's consent calendar reviewed 116 East Coda Street. And the motion was approval, review after final change as submitted.
Okay, and then was item B heard?
Yes.
Excuse me, sorry. Item B was thank you, Chair Moore. Item B was 1717 Thomas Avenue, and the motion was project design approval as requested with the comments. Item C is for 315 Meigs Road, and the motion was project design approval and final approval with the comments that it met the compatibility analysis criteria.
Okay. Thank you.
Move
We have a motion. Okay, motion by Leon, Mr. Olson,
Is there a second? I'll second it.
okay, seconded by Mr. Black. Any discussion? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
All right. We have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, now moving on to announcements.
Chair Moore, I need to step down on the first item, conflict, contract with the applicant's architect.
Okay. Any other announcements, requests by applicants?
Chair Moore,
Sure.
there's
Yep.
a board member Watkins will be attending the meeting sometime between 4 and 4:30 today.
Okay, great. Any other future agenda items, withdrawals, et cetera? No? Okay, any subcommittee reports? Probably not at this point. Okay, I think that concludes general business. And can we move on to item number 1? It's a question. 3:15. Appears we can.
Chair Moore, actually, I would like to, at this point, introduce the project planner for this case, Kathy Kennedy.
Okay, can I introduce the item first?
Oh, sorry, jumped the gun.
That's all right. I was just making sure we weren't jumping the gun on our timeline here. So looks like it's 3:10, scheduled for 3:15. So I think we can get going. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So this is item number 1, which is 119 East Coda Street. And this is concept review. It's a proposal for a new 3-story, approximately 53-foot high, 65,000 square foot police station and associated 37.5-foot high, 86,000 square foot parking structure to accommodate 244 parking spaces at the existing 1.61 acre Coda commuter parking lot. Each structure would also have a subterranean level. 8 additional surface parking spaces would be provided, existing police operations currently located at 4 separate sites would be consolidated at the new project site. Grading includes 22,000 cubic yards of export, a total of 24 Tipuana trees and 6 oak trees would be removed. The existing MTD bus stop shelter on Coda Street would be relocated along with the existing plaques commemorating the old Lincoln School. Following ABR concept review, the Planning Commission will conduct a public hearing to consider the required findings for a community benefit project to exceed 45 feet in height. This project requires development plan approval by the Planning Commission. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing, and this project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, the infill design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. Okay. With that, we can pass it over to the project planner, or staff planner.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. Good
Welcome.
afternoon, board members. I just wanted to give a couple of comments before you start your review. This is the first public hearing on the proposed design for the new proposed police station project. So at this point, we're looking for comments only. Wanted to let you know that on December 10th, the project will go to the Planning Commission, where they will review the proposed height of the project, this being a community benefit project, and they will make a determination as to whether the project can exceed the 45-foot height limit with a maximum up to 60 feet. So at this point, we are asking that the ABR give some specific comments on the height at today's hearing. Also, in addition to the height comments, we're also asking that you provide comments regarding the project compatibility analysis as well today. And then for the public, I just wanted to let them know that there will be many opportunities in the future for providing more comments. If there are comments that are not specific to the design, but more specific to the land use itself. After ABR, as I said, the project will go to the Planning Commission December 10th, and then it will return again to the Planning Commission for project consideration sometime later next year. So there are other opportunities to provide comments on the project. And that concludes my comments to you this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And it looks like we have 3 members of the project team here. If you could introduce yourselves. And so before we get into that, the project was only scheduled for an hour's worth of time, unfortunately. So this is a large project. And I'm anticipating that we're going to have some public comments and lots of questions. And so I know it's difficult, but we encourage you to try and limit your presentation to 15 minutes, and we'll see where we are at that point and see if we can get some more time in there. And, you know, it really depends on how much public input we have today. So with that in mind, please introduce yourselves and walk us through this.
Brad, you're muted. I'm Brian Cornell, by the way.
Part of my interruption. So Brad, it looks like I'm not getting audio from you right now. Your your microphone is green and looks like it should be connected. Do you have a thing that flips down so you can move, or can you check your connection again if there's a connection issue? I don't know. We just had you going. Let me mute and we'll try it again. Could you test one more time? All right, I'm gonna ask maybe if you could unplug and plug back in, or toggle between, if you go to your GoToWebinar control panel and go to audio and go switch from audio to, or from computer audio to phone and then back to computer audio, and that might switch it. I'm not hearing you right now. I don't know what happened between when you had it all going. So again, did you try, give me a thumbs up if you tried going from audio or computer audio to phone audio and then back to computer audio and see if that works. No, I can't hear you right now. What about trying, can you unplug, or I don't know if their Bluetooth, if you ran out of batteries?
Ellen, is he able to call in?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do, Brad, is if you go from computer audio to phone call, all of the phone numbers will come up of what you need to dial in order to get things going. And that includes all of the audio PIN numbers. So if you can just do that and follow through.
All right, would the rest of the team like to jump in there, or do you want
Why
to?
don't I suggest this?
Go ahead.
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me now? All of a sudden?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
My apologies, everyone. So let me start again now that you can actually hear me, and I'll speak even more quickly. My name is Brad Hess, and I'm the Principal Project Manager for the City of Santa Barbara in the Public Works Department, and I'm overseeing this project. With me today is Sarah Issa, our Senior Planner for the City of Santa Barbara, Kathy Kennedy, who we just heard from, our Project Planner for the city. Brian Cornell is our Principal Architect from Cornell Collective. Jeff Hornbuckle is Principal Architect and Project Architect from Cornell Collective, and Courtney J. Miller and Nicole Horn from CJM Landscape Architects. So as many of you probably already know, we've had a busy last 2 years, and I'd like to just really quickly summarize how we got to where we are today. The existing police station was built in 1959 for a staff of about 85 people. And today there are 211 sworn and unsworn officers and about 40 to 50 volunteers and staff working in 4 different locations. So the existing facilities are severely undersized, and the need for a new police station has been known for the past 30 plus years. And while there have been several attempts to build a new station, for different reasons or others, these attempts were thwarted. But in 2017, the city of Santa Barbara passed Measure C, the 1% sales tax, to pay for needed infrastructure throughout the city, excuse me, with the primary objective being a new police station. So with a funding source in place, the city sought a highly qualified design team. And we have 2 architectural firms working as a team. Our local architect, as I said, is Cornell Collective. And we have a technical architect out of Phoenix named MWL. MWL has designed over 300 police stations and is considered the national expert in this field of designing essential services buildings. So with the design team in place, the programming and site selection began in 2018 in order to determine the scope and scale of the new station and where the new station would go. The site selection process was really thorough, very thorough, and 19 sites were considered and evaluated using the design criteria that was created from the programming process. In the end, there were 5 sites that were then studied to determine which site would be best. The Coda Commuter parking lot continued to rise to the top of the list and was the site that was recommended to City Council as the preferred site. The City Council last September in 2019 selected the Coda lot as the preferred site alternative for environmental review, resulting in multiple technical studies on the property and 30% drawings to inform the studies as to what potential impacts there could be on the property and the community as a result of the project. Those drawings are what you will be reviewing today for this concept hearing, and we appreciate and look forward to your feedback. So right now I'd like to turn it over to Brian and Jeff from Cornell Collective to take you through the plans. And again, sorry about the technical difficulties.
Thanks, Brad. Timmy, we can switch to the next slide. Since we have limited time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the photographs. We can come back to these during questions, but just quickly, this sheet shows the site along Coda, starting with the Antioch building that is on the upper left, and then circles down to where it's along Santa Barbara Street. Next slide. And then the next series of photos really are taken from the site looking outward to these various vantage points. So I think I think you all are pretty familiar with this site, so we won't spend a lot of time on the photos, but we can come back to them. Next slide. These are our inspiration images, and I can tell you right off, we want this very important civic building to be a timeless addition to Santa Barbara's downtown. We want it to incorporate distinctly Santa Barbara detailing while meeting the modern program for the police department. We're inspired by our own post office and how it reflects its time and place. And we want this building to do the same. Sustainability is a fundamental design criteria, as is flexibility and creating light-filled space for the users. We finally want to express stormwater management features like green roofs and planter walls throughout the building. Next slide. So as Brad said, this is our site today. I think you're all, just to orient ourselves and make sure we're clear, CODA is along the bottom. Santa Barbara Street is along the right-hand side. There's about a 5-foot grade differential between the upper portion of the site going down towards CODA. Above us is the state EDD offices, and then to the left above us is our condos. Next slide. So we're going to start with the site landscape plan. I'm going to have Courtney jump in a moment, but just to explain the basics, we are preserving 9 of the existing Tipuana trees along the perimeter as shown. And this allows us to basically create a buffer to our neighbors at the west and north. We're also retaining all the significant Mexican fan palms along both streets. And the bus stop, as was mentioned in the project description, is going to be relocated on CODA towards Santa Barbara Street. And it has a really nice little mural depicting the history of Lincoln School. Ingress egress was the primary form determinant for this site. A police station has to have 2 points of ingress egress in the event that one of them is blocked off. So in our solution for this is basically that the police department entrance, and by the way, the parking structure is exclusively for the use of staff. It will be secure. It will not be available to the public. So the primary entrance is off of CODA. And then we also need public parking, limited public parking for short-term users of the police station. And that is located off the second entrance, which will be off Santa Barbara Street. Thus, the lobby is located in this location. I should mention also that all the levels of the parking and the police station building are at the same level. And you can see on the left along those Tipuana trees is the primary ramp that services those levels in the parking structure. It's impossible, I will tell you, to locate the entrance on the corner. How we treat this corner is a critical design issue, but it just does not work to put the entrance there. I will tell you that I'll explain to you functionally what's going on just very briefly without getting into details, but basically this first level is where all the patrol cars will be parked. And this will be the main point at which officers after briefing leave to go on patrol. Dispatch will be at this level, the public lobby will be at this level, and then maintenance, basic maintenance functions, trash, et cetera, will be located off that driveway off of Santa Barbara Street. There's also on this level, you can see without getting into detail, we also have the command posts. The command vehicle is parked on this level, bike parking for the bike fleet, inspection garage for vehicles that have been impounded, and some canine areas as well. Now, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Courtney to just finish briefly describing the overall site intent, and then she's going to zero in on the entry element. Go ahead, Courtney.
Thank you, Brian, Chair Moore and board members. Brian covered most of the big site planning elements as well as the existing trees, but I'll just add there are a total of 44 existing trees. We're protecting 9, as Brian mentioned. We'll be removing 35, and we're proposing approximately 26 new trees with the design. The plant palette is water-wise with an emphasis on low maintenance species that have both foliage color and textural contrast. We also, as Brian mentioned, developed a more creative approach to stormwater treatment that uses biofiltration areas and bioretention planters on the building to treat the stormwater. So we're excited to share more details about that with you in subsequent reviews. Let's go to the next page and I can walk you through the entry plaza just very briefly. So if you zoom in on the plan, so the goal of this access plaza was to provide a safe, secure, and inviting space that combines the vehicular and pedestrian access into one contiguous plaza. So we wanted to break down the formality of this space through the use of angled forms and natural organic materials. The hardscape design is composed of permeable pavers, and it takes its cues from the orientation of the building. So you can see the angles there in the hardscape design. We're also proposing native Santa Barbara sandstone boulders, which will protect the building entry and direct pedestrians towards the main entrance. We like that these are a more sculptural element of the design that references the beautiful hillsides of Santa Barbara. So if you scroll down, there's some imagery that supports the design. And you can see we've got some different ideas about how those boulders might be cut or placed within the hardscape design, but that gives you a general sense of the intent. And that's about it. I'll turn it back to Brian.
So Timmy, just scroll back up to that plan real quick. There's also a generator, emergency generator is located, is basically nestled there against the parking structure on the left. And again, this is where you can see the service door entrances into the building. Let's keep going. Next slide. Briefly, we have a basement. Well, let's go to the next slide. Sorry, Timmy, that's our site plan. Next slide is the basement plan. It's a firing range down here. This is where some of the Bearcat vehicle, this is where people would be brought in. There's a sally port, there's a holding at the ground floor, and record storage, that kind of a thing. Also, the motorcycle fleet will be down here. Next slide. This is the second floor. You can begin to see some of the green roofs. We've intentionally pulled the parking structure back from the neighbors to the north. At this level, this is basically where the patrol persons will park their private vehicles and enter into the building, which is the level where the locker rooms will be. We also have a large public meeting room that is located above the two-story lobby. And then we have a fitness room on this floor as well that has an outdoor portion that is there at the corner. Next slide. So you can see here, jumping up to the third floor of the building, the third floor of the building is set back 24 feet or so from Santa Barbara Street and about 10 feet or so off of Coda. This is additional staff parking at this level. This is also where there'll be a break room. Primary investigators are all on this level on that third floor to create a really nice light-filled interior space along with the chief and other administrative functions. So the next slide is the roof plan. Our goal is to be net zero, which is a big goal for this building. So we've got 700 photovoltaic solar panels as shown. These are all going to be flat. And then we're also putting main mechanical in the middle of the parapeted portion that you see in those blue graphics. Next slide. Let's go on and look and see what the building looks like. So here you see the entry lobby off that parking. It's a beautiful two-story light-filled volume. that's anchored by the elevator tower serving the building. As you may recall from the plan, this element is slightly cocked, and we've done this towards the north, basically to create better light and view towards the mountains. You can also see here how the third story portions are set back and start to see hints of the green roof and terraces. That one story element that you see on the left is actually the stair up from the basement. And we want this to be a beautiful, artful expression of some of our stormwater management strategies, and that's still to be determined. Next slide. So here you see from across Santa Barbara Street, the view of the building down to the corner at Coda. Again, that it's important to note that third story portion set back so that the predominant massing is 2 stories. Next slide. So this is the view at the corner. As I mentioned, we couldn't put the entrance at the corner, and so how we treat this is very, very important. We are really excited about what we're doing here. This is on the first floor is where dispatch is. They're currently located in a room with no windows at all, so it's going to be really important to get them located with the police department in something that is filled with light, but it needs to be secure. Mr. Chair, I see I'm going to run out of time, and I'd love to have 10 more minutes if I can. 7, 6.5.
5.
Okay. So this traditional red tile screen motif is going to provide security and shading at that first floor function. And then as it ascends towards the outdoor fitness area, this motif is going to break down. And we are really excited, as I said, about this providing really the defining expression and feature of the new police station. Let's turn the corner and look more along Coda. So here we see the Coda Street elevation. And again, that entry element, that corner element cocked at that slight angle. Let's go to the next slide. Just to show you a little detail of what we're imagining. We think this is going to be, again, potentially just really a beautiful element where these tiles will be supported by a wire grid. And so they will be suspended and will be set back from the plaster face. And as they ascend, basically they will start to dissolve. And so you can begin to see the hints of that outdoor fitness area. And this still will require a lot of study. We're thinking about grouting below and then actually have the grout also dissolve as it goes up. I'm sure that we will be talking about this for some time to come. Let's go to the next slide. So here we are on Coda Street looking basically north here. So in that little notch is where we're going to relocate the bus stop. And then you can see basically one of the primary vertical circulation elements there and beginning to see the parking structure, which we intend to clad in that similar tile motif and have cascading planters as well along this face. Next slide. In these slides, obviously, you can see, want to emphasize again how the third story portion is stepped back. This shows the main entrance egress for staff along Coda, and the building steps back there, and then you can also see those solar panels. Next slide. So these are the elevations, which we can also come back to. Of note, on the lower left is the Antioch building in relationship to what we are proposing. You can see, it's a little hard to see in this version, but we've got the 60-foot maximum height shown. The 2-story portions are between 33 and 36 feet tall from existing grade. And then that top of the parapet for that step back third story portion is at 53 feet, as was mentioned. Next slide. This is our last slide. This basically shows the section. What I haven't explained thus far, Timmy, if you'll blow up the lower 2 drawings, the section. We need to keep the parking level and the floor levels at the same elevation. The first floor requires 16 feet floor to floor. The remaining floors require 14'6" floor to floor, not unlike what we had at Cottage Hospital, where these floor to floor heights are essential for this essential services building. You can see how the basement sits on the site, and then you can see how the third floor portion is set back off of Santa Barbara Street by about 24 feet. The lower section shows basically the ramping that's serving those parking tiers. So I appreciate the extra time, Mr. Chair, and we will be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we will move to open public comment. Anybody who would like to address the board regarding this project, please follow the instructions on your screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel. And that indicates to me that you wish to speak. You only need to hit the hand icon one time, and a raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. And I just saw that we had some board members just turn their webcams on. For public comment, we would ask that you have your webcam, or you turned them off, but we would like to ask you to turn them on, please. And I'm going to call on Mary Louise Days to start. And I've just unmuted you, Mary Louise Days. If you could please unmute yourself. I've just sent you a unmute request. And there you go. It looks like your microphone's live. You have 2 minutes whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you. I would like to point out that the Architectural Board of Review ordinance instructs it to protect and preserve the historical charm, the aesthetic appeal and beauty of our city. It also requires a project compatibility analysis, which is very important in this case and will be a challenge. I'd like to read you a comment from an awards juror in 1929. He says, "Every effort should be made to maintain the interest and dignity of your commercial and civic architecture. The reputation of Santa Barbara as a place of unusual charm depends not only upon the great number and variety of its beautiful homes, but upon its business and public structures." I would also like to endorse and support the suggestion of Patricia Saley and others that a joint subcommittee of the ABR and the Historic Landmarks Commission be formed very soon to review and comment on these plans. This is a massive undertaking, and at the present time, it is not a Santa Barbara type of building and is not particularly attractive. It is intended to serve the public, and consideration of the public, of course, is paramount. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair, it looks like the next person I'm going to call on is Mr. Richard Clausen. Mr. Clausen, I've just unmuted you, and just to remind everybody, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. That's the last person that I see raise their hand, but I think we might have a couple more people who might want to weigh in. Mr. Clausen, I've just unmuted you. It looks like your microphone is live. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Ms. Kokenda and Chair Moore. You've received my letter, and I'm not going to belabor those points. I do think, though, that having heard the applicant's presentation, that there needs to be a better balance between the emphasis of the livability issues inside the building for the workers there, the light and air issues, and the exterior public concerns about design and neighborhood compatibility. The building is going to sit in what I think of as a transition zone between Pueblo Viejo, our core historic district, and a lower level residential and smaller commercial neighborhood. And so I don't think that the building itself should shout to people. It shouldn't shout fortress, and there's an aspect of that it shouts right now, but it should not shout edifice. And I think that at the corner of Coda and Santa Barbara, the handling of that corner is important, and the clay roof tile screening there shouts edifice. It's not visually friendly. I know it serves a purpose for the interior occupants, but it's I think it's a poor design choice for a wide open corner that has a lot of visibility. That's it. Thanks very much for listening to my comments.
Okay, and it looks like that was the last hand raise, but thank you, Timmy, for moving back to this slide. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Again, you only need to have to click on the hand icon one time, and a raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. I'll give everybody just another second, and in the meantime, if I can ask Mary if we received any written correspondence, please.
Thanks, Ellen. We did receive 3 letters, one from Miss Francesca Gall, Mr. Richard Clausen, who just spoke, and Miss Patricia Saley.
Okay, and last call for anyone else to raise their hand. And I still don't see anyone, so back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And that will do it for public comment. So we'll close public comment and move on to questions from the board. Richard, would you like to start with questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, well, let's start here with Brian, your inspiration images. They show different tile screens. One is, very, what I consider Moroccan one. One is, my question was, were these screens throughout the ones applied to this one-story stair from the basement, the ones applied to the garage, and the ones applied to the corner balconies? Would they all be the same or different, or what?
Well, no, I mean, Richard, we created this inspiration, these images some time ago, and you can see, for instance, on the left, they have the little statue that's in front of the police station that's going to be incorporated at the lobby entrance. And, we have, the 2 in the middle are really depicting a traditional screen element, as well as sort of this idea of the floating tiles. So, the one that shows the light filtering through is really the inspiration for that second floor workout space, as well as that first floor function. So I don't think these should be taken too literally, but that's the intent. And the post office is in the upper area there, which has been definitely a key inspiration to us.
So Brian, your images here also showed some of these higher windows with a hierarchy of mullions and so forth. Is that your in the larger windows with larger mullions?
Yes, that is our intent. Yeah.
Okay, and also the same goes to the overhangs on the roof, the horizontal flat soffits with express beams. Is that your intention on the?
Definitely on the 3rd floor roof. We want that to be a deep overhang with beams expressed. I haven't decided yet whether that's flat, Richard, or whether that's sloping.
Okay.
We will be studying that, but absolutely all that kind of detailing wants to be traditional. The plaster texture all wants to be traditional.
Great. Okay. if we could go to the second floor plan, and maybe Brian, you can answer this without reference to that plan as to get there. But I noticed are you actually able, second floor? I noticed that, yeah, that 1 story, you can use the garage stair up in the upper northern area as your second exit?
Well, that's the second exit for the garage. And then we are sharing the lower exit that you see that's along Coda. That is shared. You can see there's a vestibule, so that is a shared stair between the parking structure and the police station. Then there are obviously stairs inside the police station as well.
Oh, there will be inside.
Yes, absolutely. There's several stairs. There's one primary enclosure stair as well as a staff-only elevator. I'm not showing them on this plan. We're being a little secretive about the plan because we don't want people to take screenshots and know what's going on inside the police station, but there will be there'll be an additional elevator and exit stair, as well as then an open stair in the lobby to serve that meeting room that's on this second floor.
Okay. And we're not, and just as a reminder, we're not going to get into the floor plan aspects of
I was just wondering, a second stair wasn't expressed on the exterior. I just wondered why. On your corner balconies and open, was there a program requirement to have all 3 of these stories secure? So you couldn't have, I understand the lower on grade open area being totally secure, but why not have just balconies and open air openings on the second and third?
Well, we do have a lot of balconies. If you'll just switch to the next slide quickly, Timmy, we have significant balconies up on this 3rd level. And this is where the staff lounge will be. So we didn't, this is why this floor is pulled back to allow for that. And we don't really want them on the other levels. I also want to mention that obviously the building is open 24/7. When this building opens, they literally throw away the key. It's always open and will be for the life of the building. The lobby will be a public lobby, and there will be a public elevator. There will be the public meeting room on the 2nd floor, and all of those functions are accessible. But beyond that, it will all be secure.
I guess, Brian, if we go to, I guess this is a leading question. Why can't, in this corner element, why couldn't that be a 1-story with a roof garden or a combination roof garden and terrace on the 2nd floor? Why roof it all the way to the 3rd floor?
Well, I think just because we want that outdoor workout area to be available all the time, and it's kind of nice. I mean, the athletic club here in town has a great little outdoor workout space that's covered.
I get it.
Works great, so that's all.
So the workout is on the 2nd floor, not on the ground floor?
Correct. Dispatch is on the ground floor.
Okay, and
dispatch is 911 call center, by the way, just to be clear if that isn't.
Yeah. If we go to the Coda elevation. Between the prime building and the lower elevation, thank you. Between the prime building and the stair at the street, there is on the 4th, is it the 4th? 3rd floor. Your what is an exterior balcony exiting is a full height screen, and what in that recessed area?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Why is that full height? Why can't, it would help in that area to be, you know, if it was only at railing heights, it would.
Could be. You know, that's where staff lounge is, and it's an indoor-outdoor lounge arrangement. And we just didn't. We wanted the staff to not feel like necessarily they were being viewed when they're in taking a break. But there's no, that would be the only reason. We wanted to repeat that motif also in other portions of the building. So that screen could definitely drop down and still probably provide the necessary, feeling of security for staff.
Okay, and then just one last question. If you just scan over on this same elevation to the service entry, Brian, can we do that?
Well, the service entry is actually up on the north side. Is that what you mean? Or you mean the parking lot entrance, Richard, to the left? Yeah, scroll to the left, Timmy. Yeah.
There, so an architectural element over that opening, that black bar, is that your bumper bar for your height?
No, that is a solar panel. And then we have a canopy element, which I don't think we're convinced is necessarily the right detailing there, but that again is probably still going to get a lot of study, but that's what that is just kind of a canopy element at the entry.
And a minor technical question, but you have done, and these solar panels work at dead flat without drainage? Okay.
Well, I mean, they'll be probably at something like an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch per foot, but we just wanted them to be flat so that they weren't creating glare, to any of the adjoining neighbors.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, Mr. Whalen, any questions?
Yes, thank you. I have to get up my sheet here. This first question may not be that pertinent, but is the gate on the corner, the 1985 gate, have any historical significance, or will that just be taken up at another committee?
I don't think it has any historical significance. I know that Peter Edwards, along with Bob Cunningham, designed the Coda lot, and so that was a little corner element, relative to the Coda lot. So, given I don't know if that would denote significance. Obviously, it's not 50 years old yet, so to my knowledge, no. But certainly those tiles that depict the old Lincoln School site, which was torn down in the late 70s for that site, are critical to save.
That's fine. Very minor point. The next two questions are sort of related. What's the nature of that slot between the station and the structure? Because we don't see the west elevation of the station in your drawing set. Is it a blank wall, or?
So do you mean the gap between the parking structure and the police station? Is that what you mean?
Yes, there is not an elevation of that facade in the package.
Well, the north elevation actually would, yeah, you're right. We don't have the west elevation, but the north elevation, at least if we can blow up that, does show that gap. And so that gap is serving basically to separate the parking structure so that we can have windows along that side of the police station. And also, then there will be bridges, basically bridge elements. The building is all one structure from a code analysis standpoint, it's one building, but there will be a seismic break between the parking structure and the police station. And so that'll provide light. And then it also, by the way, at the first floor, it's sort of the exit way for anybody that is in custody temporarily at the station when they're released. they'll be released out that little gap out to the public, the small public parking lot to the north.
So I understand you, there is fenestration on that wall across a slot or an alleyway to the parking structure, correct?
There will be, yes, there will be. It'll be limited, but there will be openings along that side. And yeah, we can obviously provide that for you in the next reviews.
Thank you. So if I understand you correctly, the entry sequence for visitors, if they arrive by car, is to pull off the street into one of the limited number of spaces and process across the driveway to the entry door, right?
That's correct.
All right. And then my last question, the tile grills are a major feature of this process, and you give numerous examples in your presentation. Are there any local that you could point us to?
Yeah, I know that there are. I'm drawing a little bit of a blank right now, so I may need to defer. I don't know, Courtney, if you know, or Jeff, you're on the line. I don't know if you know of examples, but certainly there are.
Yeah, there's a number of examples. This is Jeff Hornbuckle from the Canal Collective. There's a number of examples where it's used, in a guardrail.
But more to the point, none of your examples are in your presentation. They're all from none of what you've presented to us are examples from Santa Barbara of this image.
You mean in the inspiration images?
Yes.
Mr. Whalen, yeah, I don't think they are.
All right.
I can chime in on that, Board Member Whalen. The building on the corner of Garden and East Cannon Perdido is a mid-century building that our office used to be in. It has a screen element along the front that I believe fronts Garden Street, that is comprised of circular terracotta tile that's somewhat similar to how this is arranged in relationship to the building.
Thank you. That's helpful. Those are all my questions.
Okay, Mr. Olson, any questions?
I have a question. Is mostly about process. I would like to know how thorough we're expected to be on these issues. So it would help me if I knew what the process, if we could review again the process as it comes back to us, before it comes back to us.
Sure. Hold on. I'd like the project planner to weigh in on that. You generally at this stage, it's mass, bulk, and scale. Their next step is really to get a review at Planning Commission for support of the height. So can the city's project planner
Yes, Kathy Kennedy
chime in?
here.
Thanks.
Yeah, again, it's looking for comments today, specifically in regard to the height, because the project will be going to the Planning Commission to look at the height exception specifically. So comments on that before that hearing. And then asking for project compatibility analysis criteria review as well. And then just your standard comments on that you give, at the concept level, first review level at this point. It may return here again. It will go to, like I said, Planning Commission for the height, and then it'll go through the DART process and be deemed complete, and then go on to Planning Commission for the land use approval. But you could also require them to come back for another round of review before that. Does that help?
So neighborhood compatibility, mass, bulk, and scale, height, those are our major elements that we want to discuss today.
That's
correct. So if I understand what Kathy said, is that if we wanted to have another review of this, we would ask for it at this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Mr. Black, any questions? Oh, you're muted.
No questions right now, thanks.
Okay. Is that everybody before I jump in with questions? I guess that is everybody. Okay, so Brian, I don't think anybody else asked, so I have to do it. Tell us why the entrance cannot be on the corner.
Well, I need to provide accessible parking, small public parking for staff. And I will tell you, have a very demanding program on what I will call a compact site. So I need to put that public parking basically in concert with the second ingress egress for the parking lot. And I don't think it is appropriate to try to put that parking lot somewhere either where it is not located next to the entrance. And then the other problem I've got, frankly, is just the issue of the grade. If I put the public entrance at the corner, aside from that problem of accessibility, it means that the northern portion of the ground floor is going to be 5 feet in the ground. I've got to have service functions that are outside of that secure parking structure, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that answers the question, but it was something that we studied and couldn't find a solution to.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I know there's a lot of, at least in some of the public comment, there's been a lot of questions about why the orientation is what it is. And I imagine you studied all sorts of configurations, including, rotating this 90 degrees so the parking area would be on the corner, essentially, of Coda and closer to the intersection.
Well, to be honest with you, the idea of putting, a parking lot at the corner, again, because of that grade issue, we didn't spend much time studying, one, because of the grade, and two, because I didn't want to put a parking lot on the corner.
And you mentioned the two egress points. Do they need to be that remote from each other, or could they be closer?
Well, they need to be as far apart as possible so that if you do have a problem, let's say on, Coda Street, that somebody has decided to, set off a bomb or whatever along there, that the other location is distinct and available.
Mm-hmm.
So they do need to be essentially at opposite ends to achieve that.
Okay. Did you study putting building mass over the public parking area?
We did not, just because of the maintenance and service functions of the building and getting a trash truck in there and a crane for the generator and other aspects like that.
Okay. Can we flip to the sections really quickly? And these questions are more for the height of the building. So yeah, I guess the middle and bottom section there. So is there a 60-foot line on these?
No, unfortunately, I'm sorry. We kind of stripped these down because they were
Yeah.
looking a little bit
Okay.
mixed up. But the elevations, if we go to
Okay, so let's go to the
previous
elevations.
sheet, it does show the heights and the 60-foot line. Maybe it would be better, Timmy, to look at the middle. Well, it probably doesn't matter. I think I have the elevations called out in the middle yeah, that elevation.
Okay, so you're 48 to that ridge, 48.4 to the ridge, and then, okay.
Yeah, again, it varies because obviously the slope is site slope is
right.
Site is sloped, but you can see the 60-foot line there as a dash line above.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Anybody else? Any follow-up? Before we move on to comments? No? Okay. Let's go to comments. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay, Mr. Olson.
So I think that this is headed in the right direction. I think the height is acceptable, certainly considering the scope of the project and the size of the site. Although I realize that that's not a reason to approve the height, but I think in my way of looking at it, the height is acceptable. I think the massing is very good. I also think the connection or the association between the parking lot and this building reads quite well. I think that's successful. I think that my only objection is, as you already said, Brian, there's going to be a lot of talk about this, is the tile entrances. I think they make, it's just such a significant element of the design. And I think it makes for long-term problems about how this looks in 10 years and 15 years, how those tiles stand up, how they collect dirt and things like that. I think they're unsuccessful. They're clever, but unsuccessful for the long term. That's all my comments.
And pardon my interruption, it looks like Chair Moore's camera is frozen for me.
That's correct.
All right, hang on just a moment. Chair Moore, let's see, it looks like we lost him offline. Vice Chair Six, would you mind, maybe could we do a 5-minute recess? And, oh, it looks like he's back on. Chair Moore, can you check your, if you could, it doesn't look like your audio is working.
There, now we can hear.
All right, good deal. All right, please go ahead.
So unfortunately, I missed probably the second half of what you were saying, Mr. Olson. So. Are you able to hear me?
Do you want me to repeat it, or do you want to go to the next person?
If you could repeat it, that'd be appreciated.
So I think the height is appropriate. I think the massing is good. I quite think that's successful.
I think I lost you just as you were talking about the screen element.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think the screen element is a very, very important element of this building. And I think it will have important consequences of locating the building and associating the building with this screen. And I think that it poses very extraordinary long-term potential for degrading and not being attractive after 10 years. So I think that part of it's unsuccessful. But in general, I think it's the building and the project's on a good plane here, and I support it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, could I say one more thing? So
Sure.
I would assume, based on what Kathy Kennedy has said, I'm not sure yet whether we think we're ready to not see this again. And the way I understand it, we'll have to say that if we think that.
Yes, it would be helpful in your commentary to say whether you feel it's ready to send on to the Planning Commission for their input for the height, and or whether you think it needs to come back for another round of review from us.
I think I'd like to wait and see what the other board members say before I enter that.
Okay. All right. Who'd like to go next? Richard?
Yeah, thank you. I repeat Mr. Olson's comments about the height. I think it's very successful site plan. I thoroughly understand the functionality of having the public entry on Santa Barbara Street reflect what I would expect to at least the main building to be a very traditional articulated example of the Spanish style, which I think that this essential city building should be. In that regard, I think that the parking structure, however, because it is a functional parking structure, especially with the solar panels above, does not need to be and would be awkward to try to get that into a traditional style. So I think that it would also help if these two structures contrasted each other. That the garage with its whatever is ultimately decided on the tile screening and the grills and so forth. I think that it would help help to have a contrast here, in the language and the style. And I think that taking the functional language of the tile grill around the corner to this the corner structure is as Mr. Olson said, very unfortunate. I just don't think that corner is appropriate at all. If it is a two-story as opposed to a three-story, it would very much help if the second story was part of either a tile roof. I don't know, Brian, what you do about your balance green, a green roof and so forth, absorption and things, but I think I appreciate your enthusiasm, Brian, but I don't share it. I think that needs a lot of work. I'm looking forward to seeing this building come up, at least the office part, the people building coming up to a very quality traditional Spanish style. In some of my detailed comments, if we go to, well, we talked about the window mullions being in a hierarchy. I think that we can see it on this plan at the entry. I think that this steel awning that wraps around goes down the northern end is a more contemporary expression. I think it needed to wrap around, that, you know, you should have more of a limited, more traditional canopy just above the entry itself. We talked about the dropping the clay tile screen, if we could go to the coda elevation. The last one, yeah, I talked about this screen up there to the and side of the, yes, thank you. I think that's a very important element that could be dropped down to help reinforce the reduction of massing between the two structures. And, you know, here's my point. I think that everything, and I don't know whether the garage stair here is part of the Hispanic style of the more historic Spanish style of the office building or not, but I think, you know, here we have kind of the sameness to these two structures that I think a difference could be celebrated and therefore appear as two much smaller buildings rather than one large. If we go to view number 3, I don't know up and down where that is. It's a, yeah, yes, thank you. That was it. Next one. No, oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, view number 6. So Brian, just a minor one here that it might help these the tile screens and the cantilevered balconies if you turn the corner on that 3rd floor with that same expression. I think it would help. It just looks like a, you know, too much a facade there. Do you understand? I hope you understand what I'm saying. As the 3rd floor of the parking garage drops back, you know, there you go, right there. If you could turn the corner with at least some of the expression of the front elevation, that would help make that a 3-dimensional form rather than a 2-dimensional facade. We talked about developing the overhangs with in a more traditional way. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, I'd like to compliment, but I think that it is a very strong, well thought out plan that solves a very demanding program.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whalen, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Moore. Let me call up my notes here, and I will try to focus on the task at hand for mass size and bulk. The site plan is completely full and leaves no room for the inevitable expansion. So I think it's rather unfortunate that after all the site selection, we came up with a site that just barely fits and doesn't allow for any of the future, which we've been told that, and we anticipate the force will grow. I find that the main entry is relatively hidden, and it's only accessible by vehicle from a one-way street. That, I think, works against some of the qualities that I've heard mentioned about the building should project an openness and service to the community. These rotated masses at the 2 points seem very arbitrary and incongruous to the overall design. I think it's unfortunate that the parking structure, which is completely for the police force, dominates half of that elevation of the street. And the one view, I'm sorry, I don't remember the number of the page of the image. Some of that elevation seems quite startling in the way it's articulated with the PV panels in front of it. And I don't find this a very inviting or a welcome addition to the streetscape in Santa Barbara. The building massing should really connect to the surrounding area in a much stronger way. And I think you've done an admirable job of massing it as it is, but it bears no resemblance to the surrounding buildings, especially at the intersection where I feel that it should step down to relate to the other 3 one-story buildings on those corners. I also think the building can make a stronger relationship to the Veracruz Park across Coda Street, where from a second and a third story, there are going to be some remarkable view opportunities down across that park. And I would think that an open exercise area might be much better suited to position itself to that view, along with some offices. And beyond that, beyond the tasks at hand, I think the station should have some design relationship with either or both the existing police station, which I think it does in some brushstrokes rather than whole elevations, and the jail portion of the county courthouse. Both of these are only 5 blocks away. This is a very important civic building and should, to reiterate, reflect those qualities of openness and service to the community. I know the Kernal Collective is capable of this for their finely executed designs at the district attorney's office and now the Santa Barbara Bank and Trust are much more successful and amenable, stylistically harmonizing with these classic buildings in Pueblo Viejo. I find the imagery here, to get off point, to be a little bit more belligerently modernist and needs to be mellowed out by our Mediterranean Hispanic tradition. Thanks very much, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Black, any comments?
You know, I'd have to say that I agree with most, if not all, the comments that have been made. I'm particularly taken by Mr. Whalen's comments, and not much more to add than that. But it's a great project, but it's definitely going to take some looking at, I think. That's all.
Okay. And Mr. Watkins, you popped up here. Are you able to participate at this point, or you're just arriving now? So probably not.
Yeah, I was listening in on it, but I wasn't, obviously I won't be doing questions at this point, and I'll be abstaining at least to keep everything balanced. But I was following it online. Okay. Is it possible to add comments at that point, since I will be abstaining, or no?
I don't believe so at this point.
Okay, that's okay.
All right. But you can study up for the next one, right? Okay, so that's everybody. Mr. Whalen, you have a follow-up point?
Yes, and this is related to the streetscape. I'm wondering, and I'm maybe getting out of bounds here, if the parking structure itself couldn't be turned 90 degrees and still have its 2 discrete entries, and the station building itself become a liner for the parking structure so that all that we see and get on the streetscape is the police building. This might help alleviate a problem I see of a very deep floor plate, which is going to be difficult to get light and air to. And if it were a thinner liner building, this might be achieve two goals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, my own comments would be similar to Mr. Whalen's. Especially on the elevation sheet, if we can go to that sheet. I think it's the elevation from Coda Street just strikes me as very austere and a little cold. And particularly the corner element is just very, unfortunately, unwelcoming and just, I don't know that that's what we want to put forward as the first impression of this building and of the police department. And then just to echo Mr. Whalen, I think it's, if we zoom out a little bit, you can see the entire block, you know, and you really have in the center of the block, you have very little life. It's garage entrances, and even on the Antioch building next door, it's sort of a really dead area, which is something that we encourage designers to avoid. We want to have life on the street. We want to have activity. And I know it's very difficult to cram all this program in here, but there must be a way to avoid having this grill of the parking lot be right there on the street and contributing to this, you know, sort of dead zone within the block. And I feel that much of the building is nicely done, nicely crafted. Massing seems to be acceptable for a good portion of it. And the height seems to be fine. You know, it is across the street from some one-story buildings, but, you know, this is, you know, the future of Santa Barbara, and we need to allow for buildings of greater size to happen. And so I can support that portion of the project. I agree, it's really unfortunate to have this entry, you know, off of Santa Barbara Street and not a little bit more open, obvious to the public. So I would encourage the continued study of that. I know there's lots of limitations in the program, but there must be something that can be done to solve this puzzle. So I would, even though I'm in support of the general massing and height, I would like to see this project again to see if they can be refined in some way to make it, to bring it more in line with the compatibility analysis list. Does anybody have any other thoughts to add, or shall we could take a straw poll on whether we need to see this again, or if we're ready to move it on to the Planning Commission? Is that something we would like to do?
Mr. Chair, Richard, I think it would behoove the efficiency of the whole process if we could have another look at this before it went to planning commission, so it would be more architecturally palatable, so they could make their height and massing findings easier.
I would agree. Okay. So that was a good start at a motion. Do you want to make that an official one?
Okay, I'll make a motion for indefinite continuance to return to the full board to do we have to repeat? I guess we have to repeat some of the comments we made, right? For the applicant to refine the architecture of the building to make it more palatable to the desired images of a civic building in Santa Barbara, being more traditionally Spanish, to make it more inviting to the surroundings and to the streetscape. In particular, we would like to see a re-study of the canted two-story volume at the corner of Coda and Barbara Street to eliminate the feeling of well, to soften it, bring it more into the Hispanic character that's suggested in the rest of the office portion of the building, to take it to restudy the simplicity of the boxy design and the tile screen. Yeah, on the Coda elevation to study the portion of the garage, especially at the lower floor, to make it more inviting with human scale and less like the austere functional garage that we see there. I think that the suggested inspiration images and what we see on the renderings that are not quite there yet, that we look forward to the development of a fine example of the Spanish architecture for these important buildings. I think I don't know whether, and maybe I will intentionally, let me say this. I'm intentionally leaving out of my motion issues regarding the location of the main entry and some of the previous board members' comments about rejiggling the overall site plan and the relationship between the office building and the parking structure. So I'm not going to say anything to that at this point. And not saying that, I would think that the site plan and arrangement of the masses in particular, due to the demands of the program, are acceptable. And most importantly, and maybe this should be comment number one, that the overall height and in relationship to the 60-foot height limit is acceptable, and the overall massing is acceptable. That would be my motion.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
I would have a question before I would second it.
Okay.
Did you include any comments about the tile and the use of that in these, as how he's proposed using it?
Well, I think, yes, thank you, Mr. Olson. I did say that the tile at the corner structure was not acceptable. I did not say that the rest of the tile screens at the parking lot were not acceptable. I did not say they were not acceptable. Double negative.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Olson. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Whalen.
I could be mistaken. I don't recall anything in the motion about neighborhood compatibility. Did I miss something?
I think I alluded to making the, no, I didn't. And I think that I did not do that for a purpose, because I don't see a strong developed architecture on the opposite corners of Coda, and opposite sides of Coda and Santa Barbara. So I wouldn't include that and would not know how to craft that in a meaningful way. But you're welcome to suggest an addition.
Well, there would be 2 points: that the corner of the new structure, the size be reduced to better relate in scale to the existing buildings, and that there is some relationship with the Plaza Veracruz Park.
I would accept and make include in my motion to study reducing the size and number of apparent stories on the corner massing. I don't feel strong enough about the Veracruz relationship to have it in my motion.
Okay, and then to be clear, you were very specific about the Coda Street parking garage facade and not being concerned about the I guess the blankness of that, and sort of the fact that it's all parking lot program with no other program wrapping the edge of it, or the boundary of it.
Yeah, if we reread my motion, I know that sometimes I carry on, but I think I addressed the fact that the architecture should be more human scale and of interest, rather than a stark garage.
Okay.
That's what I said. I don't see. I don't find it appropriate to say that there needs to be other program functions located in this location. I think that that's too far a stretch.
Okay. All right. Let's read the motion back, please.
Oh, help me.
All right, this is Mary. I will try my best to read it back. So the motion is to continue indefinitely with the following comments. Number one, refine the architecture to make it more palatable to the image of a Santa Barbara style civic building, provide a more traditional Spanish style, and make the project more inviting to the streetscape. Number two, restudy the 2-story volume at the corner of Coda and Santa Barbara Street to soften it and make it more in line with Spanish style character. Number three, restudy the simplicity of the boxy design and the tile screen at the corner structure. Number four, study the portion of the garage on the Coda Street elevation, especially at the lower floor, to make it more inviting with the human scale and less austere. The board looks forward to the development of this fine example of Spanish architecture for important Santa Barbara buildings. Number six, the placement of the building masses are acceptable due to the nature of the program. Number seven, the height is acceptable. Number eight, the overall massing is acceptable. And finally, number nine, the corner of the new structure. The size of the new structure on the corner should be reduced, and the parent massing should be reduced in order to relate it better to the existing building scale.
Oh, if I may, Mary, can we make note number 7 and number 8, have them number 1 and 2? I think number 7 is the height, refers to the height. And number 8 refers to the massing acceptable. That would be number 1 and number 2.
Okay.
And I think there's some, and I think there's some redundancies there. I think that we're number 9. I think and if it's okay with Dennis, then I think earlier I said to soften and to make the corner structure more harmonious with the streetscape. So I don't think number 9 is, I think it's redundant. Dennis, do you not agree?
Well, number 9 and number 2 could easily be merged to say just that.
Okay, let's do that. Let's merge the comments on number 9 after the number 2. I forget what, yeah, number 2 was it, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Nonetheless, a gold star for Mary.
Thank you.
You make me sound a lot better than I think I do.
All right.
More Vice Chair 6, can I
Yes.
offer an observation?
Okay.
Is it appropriate for me to offer an observation on a motion I'm not going to be weighing in on?
Sure, let's hear it.
Okay. When I was listening to those comments, I think for the sake of the board and sake of the applicant, perhaps reconsidering, there's a couple points in the motion. One was about finding the architectural style, and I'm probably paraphrasing, generally acceptable, the Spanish style, the quality of the Spanish style. But another comment was asking, I think, the applicant to look at other examples of civic buildings and tie in this particular building style more in line with the existing civic buildings in our city.
Yeah, it's a little.
I read that as it kind of sounds like maybe the style is not quite what we want it to be, but at the same time it is. So is there a way we could provide a little bit more clarification on maybe what's not working and what is?
One of those was redundant, and I liked one of them better. I think I like the one that said we're looking forward to this being refined into a fine example of civic Spanish architecture. And Mary, I don't know which one. And then I did say something positive about the style as it appears now, and I would like to take that one out.
Okay, does that make sense, Mary?
I guess we might have to read it through again and stop her when appropriate.
Yeah, I do wish we could see sort of a text version of the motion on screen so we could get a better reading of it, but
We
Yes.
we can always edit it next time, but it would be nice to.
well, let's get it right now. So Mary, if we could hear that again.
Yeah, sure. So,
Thanks.
let's see. Continue indefinitely with the following comments. Number one, refine the architecture to make it more palatable to the image of a Santa Barbara civic building, provide a more traditional Spanish style, and make the project more inviting to the streetscape.
Okay. Well, we wanted our positive comments to come first about the mass and the height. Is that right, Richard?
Yeah, Mary, 7 and 8 are to be 1 and 2.
All right. Give me one moment.
Of course.
All right. So I have number one, overall height was acceptable, and number two, the overall massing is appropriate. Number three is refine the architecture to make it more palatable to the image of a Santa Barbara civic building, provide a more traditional Spanish style, and make it more inviting to the streetscape. Number four, restudy the 2-story volume at the corner of Coda and Santa Barbara Street in order to soften it and make it more in line with Spanish style character. The corner of the new structure should be reduced in size and massing to relate it better to the existing building scale.
Existing streetscape, is that what we wanted, gentlemen? Instead of building scale, I think we need to say neighborhood.
As a seconder of the motion, accept that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So
right.
streetscape?
Or neighborhood.
Okay.
Which would you like?
Neighborhood.
Neighborhood.
Great.
All right. Continuing on, number five is to restudy the simplicity of the boxy design and the tile screen at the corner structure.
I think that could be in, that could be also included in the previous. I think that one's redundant, don't you think, gentlemen?
With which number?
With the previous one, we're talking about lump that with the discussion on the corner box.
All right, I can do that. Next, I have on the Coda Street elevation, study the portion of the garage at the lower floor in order to make it more inviting with the human scale and less austere.
I think, Mary, if we could say, especially at the lower floor.
All right, especially at the lower floor. All right, next I have the board looks forward to this project being developed into a fine example of Spanish architecture for important Santa Barbara buildings.
I think that's redundant. We've already said it in number 3.
Right. All right. And then finally, I guess this was number 1. The placement of the building masses are acceptable due to the nature of the program.
Yeah. Yes, that's number 2.
I'll group that in with the first 2. And that's it.
All right. Sounds.
Does it sound like you want it?
I think so. Anybody else?
All right, are all those changes acceptable to the seconder of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take our vote.
All right. So we have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
Board Member Watkins,
Abstain.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, before we move on to item number 2, can we take a 2-minute recess, please? Okay, we are going to reopen our meeting and move on to item number 2, which is 1316 East Mason Street. Here for concept review. This is a proposal for a 914 square foot first and second story addition to existing unit B, which is part of a duplex on a 19,798 square foot lot developed with 2 duplexes totaling 4 residential units. Project entails demolition of a 228 square foot as-built addition, the addition of a 74 square foot second story deck, conversion of 213 square feet of garbage to habitable space. I'm sure it's not just garbage. A new 2-car garage attached to a separately permitted accessory dwelling unit is also proposed. No work is proposed on the other 3 units. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. The project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, the infill design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. Okay, if we can have our applicant on the screen.
Mr. Chair.
Hi there, it looks like maybe one of our board members needs to drop off to allow the applicant to show their face. There he is, okay. Welcome. So before you jump in, please note the timer there in the upper right-hand corner. If you could limit your presentation to 15 minutes, that'd be very helpful for our schedule.
Yep.
Okay, introduce yourself and take us through your project.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We are switching gears. I don't know if we could pick a more different project than you just reviewed. We're heading over to the east side. We're at 1316 East Mason Street. If we could zoom in on a parcel map, is Timmy driving this or is Ted? Great. Okay, so we are the
Timmy's driving it.
Okay, thank you. Timmy, we are the double lot there on Mason Street. It's the 5th lot down from Salinas. And the duplex that we're talking about is on the north side. It's number 1 more down there. Yeah. It's number 20 there, Timmy. Let's see if we can flip to the next page. I'll show you some pictures. This double duplex lot is surrounded by 2-story houses. The duplexes here are single story, but on all 3 sides there are 2-story houses. The photo on the upper left is the house to the south. Middle is right across the street. And then you can start to get a flavor of the duplex with the other photos. Tammy, if you could go down to the lower right-hand photo, okay, so there's a little T111 siding chunk there. That is the section that we're going to demo. That was the as-built section. And then if we go to the next page, the survey, you can find that on the right side. It's that little gray chunk on the right side of the upper duplex. Yeah, exactly. So that is going to be demolished. You can see the neighbor's garage right on the property line just to the north of that. So the next sheet is our little site plan. We're proposing a 2-story addition right in the middle of the site. So I'll get these dimensions on for the next one, but from the front property line to our 2nd-story addition there, it's 89 feet. And from the rear property line, it's 84 feet. So we're pretty much as centered as we could get with this little 2nd-story addition. You'll see that there's also a proposed accessory dwelling unit on the right side, but that's not under review in this stage. Tina, let's go to the next sheet, the demo plan. You can see that right-hand chunk that we're going to demolish. So all we're touching is unit B, the back unit. Both duplexes have this garage to garage configuration. We're just going to infill that existing garage and convert that to habitable space. I'll show you that on the next sheet. Perfect, thank you. All right, so what we're going to do with this little house is, our little duplex, is convert that garage. We'll get a bathroom out of it and a laundry room, and then 3 small bedrooms along the north side, and then get a open plan on the south side. You can see the stairs leading up to the second story addition, which is on the next sheet. Perfect. You can zoom in on the left-hand side. That's perfect. Great. Okay, so stairs come up and get you to a little bedroom, master closet, and master bath there. There's a little deck off to the north that is a 74 square foot deck. It may be mislabeled. It's pretty small. It is 12 feet from the property line and only 6 feet deep. So it's not not a party deck, just a little view from the master. And then the last sheet has some elevations. I think maybe, yeah, that middle one is probably the easiest one to look at. So we're not proposing any crazy plates. The existing plate heights are 8 foot. New plate height's going to be 8 foot for our little second story addition. Match existing materials, match existing roofing, trim. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, all sides of the property are 2-story, and we've pulled this one as far away from everything as we possibly could. So working family, getting a little bit more room for growing children and trying to make do. So I think in under 5 minutes, that is the extent of my presentation to keep you on track.
Okay, it's some sort of a record. So with that, we will open for public comment. If there's anybody in the public that would like to address the board regarding this project, please follow the instructions on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if you wish to comment on this item, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, which indicates to me that you wish to speak. And I'm going to call on Alan Gade. Please correct me with the pronunciation of your last name. Okay. Okay, it looks like your microphone is live. You have 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hi, yes, it's Gady, Alan Gady. And are you going to speak?
Well, you can do it.
Okay, well, we've actually just heard about this new project recently. And we're looking at both units, not just the one. So from the plans and seeing people on the roof of the existing unit B, it's clear that all of the second floor windows on the south side of the rebuild of unit B and of the proposed new ADU face our unit, which is 1311 Salinas Place, unit 2. And they face our unit and the other units at 1311 Salinas Place. So they look into our 2 bedrooms in the back upstairs and into our living room and patio downstairs. So this would be an invasion of privacy from our point of view that would be difficult to live with and reduce the property value. It would be better if the plans were a lot, from our point of view, if the plans were aligned so that the windows weren't facing us. However, if it does go ahead, we're wondering if there's any way we can have the sight line blocked by trees or hedges there. With either trees, hedges, or bushes. And we're also concerned about of course, about the noise, dust, and pollution from the construction. My wife is housebound with autoimmune arthritis and asthma. So the construction work is going to impact her significantly. And because of this, we'd like to know when it happens about the work schedule and request 2 rest days a week and a reasonable starting and ending time. I don't know if that's within the scope of this meeting or not. We're not
We'd like
familiar with it.
vegetation now.
And yes, and before the construction work, we'd like to have the vegetation if possible. Okay, I guess that's about wraps it up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we sent this in writing actually.
Yes, that was received. Thank you.
And thank you. And now I'm going to call on Don McMillan. Don, I've just unmuted you and I'm sending you an unmute request. If you could please unmute yourself by clicking on, looks like you're ahead of the game. Looks like your microphone's live. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Don McMillan, and I live on 1311 Salinas Place, unit number 4, right next, in the same unit as Alan. And our concern mirrors his as far as like privacy and mostly concerning the unit that's going to eventually end up, or being proposed to end up atop the garage that's going to be built. But also curious about sight lines as far as how tall this addition will be on the house. That probably won't affect our unit as much as in regard to visibility and being able to see like mountains and sky and trees and everything. But we are concerned about the addition that will end up on top of on the parking structure, which looks to be like 2 units is proposed for this one, for the parking garage, and the third at a later date with the accessory dwelling unit on top. So yeah, we're concerned about losing visibility and potential loss of property values as well, and potential privacy issues as far as windows looking straight down into our very small patio area and bedroom and living room. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now I'm going to call on Blake Dorfman. I've just unmuted you, and if you could please unmute yourself. All right, you have 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'll be very brief. I live in the unit in between Alan Gady and Dawn, who just shared their thoughts. I'm also the HOA president, and we discussed this in an HOA meeting here, and we're very excited at the possibility of the property in question being developed and adding. It is, it's not the most sightly property right now, and we're excited about that getting, cleaned up and we are concerned, though, about our property values and our privacy being affected. We do have a nice view of La Cumbre Peak, and I want to make sure that that's not threatened, and also the privacy looking directly over into not only our bedrooms, but our living rooms, our backyards. We want to ensure that that line of sight is not hindered, because that could definitely affect the property value. So we don't want to stand in the way of, sprucing up and welcome additions to the neighborhood and across the fence. But we also, as a whole, all 5 of our units are very, more concerned about the effects on our property and our privacy. So we hope we can find a middle ground on that. That's all.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, that was the last hand that was raised. I would just like to ask Mary if we received any written correspondence and give people one last chance to raise their hand.
Thanks, Ellen. We did receive just 1 letter from Mr. Alan Gady that did speak earlier. Thank you.
And back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will close public comment and go on to questions from the board. If you could, our board members could come back on screen here. All right, why don't we start with Mr. Cunningham? Do you have any questions?
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, just one question of Mr. Cottrell. What can you do to alleviate your neighbors' concerns about privacy? I guess with regard to planting and perhaps relocating windows.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Can I show you where these neighbors are, just to give you an idea of our configuration? Timmy, would you mind going to 11? Let's see, 2 more up. Okay, so that 1311 Salinas Place is on the lower right back here. It's beyond this open yard. It's farther to the right. It's the property to the right of us. So they are approximately 89 feet from the project. And they are 2 stories. So I think it's one of those, I appreciate, and the owners appreciate their perspective. Right now, this is a bit of a fishbowl in the back of 1316. We've got 2-story houses looking down on all sides. So I think the best thing here would be we can meet with that HOA and come up with a solution that they're happy with. And we can talk about maybe a planting solution along that way. I mean, I think the Crawfords also want their privacy on their parcel. So I think there's a happy common ground here.
Thank you. One more question. Can you maybe indicate on the plan where the view of La Cumbre Peak is?
Sure, it'd be the northwest.
Northwest?
Yep.
Okay, so you are in the sight line.
Yeah, but I think height-wise, if you're looking from a 2-story house that's 90 feet away, I don't think you're going to be blocking anything. I mean, that's a whole lot away.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, Mr. Watkins, questions?
No, Board Member Cunningham asked the questions that I had too. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Black, questions?
Yeah, I agree. No questions.
Mr. Olson, any questions?
I wonder if the applicant would be a little more specific about matching materials, what they are.
Certainly, if we can switch back to the photo sheet, the second sheet, Timmy. There, it's everywhere except that addition we're going to demolish. It's a stucco. And then it's got a green trim. So, it's a little beat up in a couple spots. So we're going to go back in and paint up the green trim and go back with that same stucco. No T111 siding.
And the roofing?
It's a composite shingle. So we'll just go with asphalt roofing.
And do you intend to repaint all of the buildings in this project?
Well, not 1314. Probably enough construction is going to go on with 1316 that we'll touch that whole building.
I guess that's a yes, sort of.
Yep.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay, and then Richard, are you out there?
Yes, I am. Question, what is the material of the drive, the common drive? Is there any proposal to upgrade that?
It's asphalt right now, and it might just get a topping, but it's not part of the main project at this point.
Understand, thanks. That's my questions.
Okay, my questions have to do with the neighbor to the north. So there's a small garage that's on the property line, and then it looks like dwelling in the front or to the left of that, and dwelling to the right of the garage, and a mix of private yard space and driveway, etc. So with your second floor addition in that deck, the deck is facing towards the north or the south?
Facing towards the north. It's the gable on the north side.
Got it. Okay. So from that deck, you'll be looking down essentially onto the rear yard of the house to the north.
Yeah, it's halfway overlapping that existing garage. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then if we flip to the elevation sheet. So the north elevation, you have a pair of doors leading out to that. There's that a window and then a single door?
Yeah, so the window on the right is at the top of the stair. So you get a sort of a view over the deck. And that's 18 feet away from the property line, that window.
Mm-hmm. And there's, on your site plan, there's no indication of a plan for additional landscaping at this point on this subject property.
Correct.
So you're relying on some trees that are existing but not on this parcel for
Correct.
some sort of privacy. Okay. Okay. And I know we're not supposed to talk about the ADU, but you've got kind of a mix going on there with essentially a two-car garage in the mix there within the ADU. So can you tell us, is there a maneuvering reason that you're down to 3 feet from the back of the garage to the property line?
Yeah, part of that is to be able to get a large RV to be able to turn in there. It's a long garage. I think it's a 29-foot interior to fit I believe it's a 28-foot RV. So it's to be able to house that thing.
So is it a tall garage then as well?
At this point, it's not, no. It's and boat store. I guess it's sorry, not an RV, it's a boat that gets back in there.
Okay. So that's not driving the ADU higher?
No. No.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions.
Hey, Chair Moore.
Oh, Mr. Whalen? Yes.
Yeah, thank
Mr.
you.
Whalen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Moore. For the applicant, Mr. Cottrell, in regard to the comments made, could you talk about the slope of the site? Which way does it fall?
Yeah, it falls to the rear.
So that would be looking at the image in front of us from left to the right. And what is the fall?
Well,
What is the-
I'm sorry, Mr. Board Member. It's a very gentle fall. It's about, well, it actually slopes back up. So it's 50 feet at the front property line and 50 feet at the rear property line. So it's relatively flat. It does a little bit of a stoop.
Right. There's a 48-foot at the lower right-hand corner.
Yep.
So we might assume that the adjacent properties who made comment are slightly lower. Is that a fair assumption?
No, I mean, if we've got a 48 topo line where that property is and a 48 topo line where we're proposing the addition. So it's pretty much even ground.
And does that evenness extend across the property line to the neighbors?
No, they're actually higher. They're raised up.
They are higher. Thank you.
Yep.
Chair Moore.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, there was actually 2 questions that came to mind that I didn't ask earlier. Do I have time to ask those right now?
Okay. Yes.
Thanks. Could the applicant clarify what the existing doors and windows are on these 2 existing structures on site and what you're proposing?
Yeah, it's a mix right now. There's some have been retrofit. So they're, on one, you can see in that middle shot, there's some like a white vinyl window. And then on the left shot, there's a metal window. We would go with kind of like a wood clad. So it's just a clean, probably wouldn't repeat the same aluminum slider.
And would you just do that for the new addition, or would you do the windows in the existing unit or the existing house on that particular structure?
At this point, cost-wise, we were hoping just to touch the main house. There is a renter, so there are people living there. So ideally, we do it all. I understand the point, but at this point, we're just hoping to do just the house.
Thank you. And then last question is, if we can go back to the elevations real quick, please. What's the distance of separation between the, what you're proposing is going to be the addition on the back of that duplex? And then I know it is proposed, but since it's showing up right now as a footprint, what's the distance to the new ADU and garage?
It's 12.8. Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks. That's it.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, let's move on to comments. If we could have the applicant turn his webcam off. There we go. We've got Richard back. Somehow we need to find a way to get 7 people on screen. Okay, let's start with Mr. Cunningham. Any comments?
Yes, thank you. I think the project is generally acceptable. It's a modest addition, and I think it's appropriate for the neighborhood. I would just urge the applicant to work with the neighbors to address their privacy concerns. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Black?
I would agree with those comments. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Olson?
Yes, I'd urge them to work with the neighbors as Mr. Cunningham has suggested.
Okay,
That's
Mr.
all.
Whalen?
No additional comments to those very fine observations.
Okay, Mr. Six?
Yeah, I think the board needs to do their due diligence, and even though this is a very modest addition, it certainly would help give comfort to me to have some photographs from up on the roof to the folks, to the surrounding properties, just to verify those relationships and to see if there's any screening required, and maybe in preparation of this new 2-story proposal. So I think I think that it's our responsibility to judge when there is discussions between property rights and neighborhoods influence. So I would suggest that we continue this, and or it could go to consent with additional photograph studies of those relationships. That's my comments.
Okay. Mr. Watkins?
I agree with the comments of Board Member Cunningham, and I would just add that the comment that I appreciate the applicant's willingness to do the wood clad units for the new doors and windows on the addition. I think that's appropriate. And like you said, if you guys have budget later on to go back to the existing, I know it's not a project as part of the project scope, so I understand that and support that. But I do support the clad units more than matching the existing with vinyls or metal right now.
Okay, anything else? Nope. Okay. My own comments have to do mostly with the privacy impact to the neighbor to the north. It seems very immediate, and the addition of the second story is going to have an impact on that neighbor. So I would encourage the applicant to study how they can provide some sort of a screening tree or something along that side to ensure that this owner is taking care of their side of the privacy issues that might arise from this, and as well as on the areas between the new garage and the property line, if there's a way to add some additional planting along there to provide a buffer and screening opportunity into which will definitely become some sort of a privacy issue. There are windows directly opposing that building. And that would be a concern if I lived there too. So, and as always, it goes both ways. The occupants of this applicant's property would want to have privacy from the neighbors. So, those are my comments. Mr. Whalen, are you speaking? Okay. All right. Okay, so this is concept, no appealable action will be taken. So does anyone have a motion they would like to put forward? Do we feel it complies with the guidelines, et cetera?
Mr. Chair, I think that make a motion that it comply. It's a modest a reasonable addition, that it complies with the compatibility criteria, that when it comes back in its next level of review, we should see photographs of the surrounding neighborhood, especially from vantage point of the top of the roof where the new addition is going to go, to assure the board that privacy issues are either non-existent or determine appropriate modifications to alleviate those privacy issues. So that would be my motion for indefinite continuance. Back to, oh gosh, do we need to see this gentleman at the full board? Or can we go? I think, go ahead.
It seems to me that we should see a landscape plan at some point.
Yes, I'm sorry. I should include in my motion that the next level of review should include a landscape plan. In particular, and specific to a possible sightline and private issues.
I'll second your motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
can it come back to consent?
I think it should come back to full board.
I agree. All right, I'll leave it at full board.
Okay, we're getting a lot of feedback from somebody's microphone. Okay. All right, so Mr. Cunningham seconded that. And is there any other discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, when it comes back to the full board, is it going to come back for preliminary design approval or preliminary and final, which?
Well, they have to, well, at this, based on our review, it can't receive any sort of appealable decision, which would be a
That's right.
preliminary approval. So it would return at conceptual. And at that point, we could do what we'd like, depending on the result.
And Mr. Chair, isn't it at the applicant's risk to develop drawings beyond necessary and try for full final?
It is, it's up to them, what they'd like to do, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion? Should we read that back? Read the motion back, please.
All right. So the motion is to continue indefinitely with the following comments. The proposal is modest and reasonable. The project compatibility criteria are generally met. Provide photographs of the surrounding neighborhood, especially the vantage point from the roof where the new addition will go, in order to assure the board that privacy issues are either non-existent or provide a solution to alleviate the privacy issues if they exist. And finally, provide a landscape plan, specifically include sightlines and any potential privacy issues.
Okay, does that sound like you want it to sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right, Mr. Whalen, you had something?
I
to-
might add that those photographs include views from the adjacent neighbors.
All right, I'll add that in. Include
Does
views
the-
from adjacent neighbors.
Does the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion want to include that?
With all due respect, a view to and from are about the same. So I've found in my experience that if you get a view to those neighbors, you can understand what they would see in mirrored. So I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but we'll leave it to the applicant.
I think that what would really help would be a drone view. But that, I don't think that's well, I don't think I would say that it must be, but it seems to me that drone views, pictures from the drone are not that hard to come by these days.
No, but there's other means. There's certainly you could get bird's eye views from Google Earth and other ways to provide those images.
I would rather not include those specifics in my motion and leave it up to the applicant to find ways to adequately, he knows our concerns and he can respond how to record those.
I agree. Okay, so let's take our vote.
All right, thank you. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
Board Member Watkins,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, on to our final item. Item number 3, which is 515 West Olivos Street. Concept review. This is a proposal for a 3-story, 4-unit apartment building. Using the AUD program, unit mix includes 3 3-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom unit ranging in size from 1,305 square feet to 1,372 square feet, with the average unit size of 1,362 square feet. The proposed density on this 12,585 square foot lot is 17 units per acre. The site is located in a medium high density, which allows 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre. The proposal includes 8 parking spaces and 8 bikes parking spaces. The existing residence is proposed to be used as accessory space. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. This project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, the urban design guidelines, the infill design guidelines, and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. Okay. If we could have our applicant on screen. We have our applicant.
Mr. Chair, this is Ted Hamilton supporting staff for ADR and taking over for Ellen Kukinda as moderator. I'm just promoting the applicants as we speak. Bear with us, please.
Great. Mr. McClure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. Let's see, Stephen Johnson, Matt Cibola, and Mr. McClure, if you could come back on and just check your webcams and your microphones, then we can make sure they work and get going with your presentation. It looks like Mr. Sibilia doesn't have a webcam. That's okay. All we need is audio. Let's see, Mr. Sibilia, if you could, I unmuted you. Can you say something just to confirm that your audio works, please?
Yes, this is Matt Sibilia.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the name pronunciation clarification. All right.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick overview of the project. So
Well, hold on, before we jump in, hold on.
Okay.
So you'll notice on the upper right-hand corner there, we have our timer. So we'd ask that you limit your presentation to 15 minutes. That'll give us adequate time to ask questions and all of that. So if you could introduce yourself again and then orient us to where this is and take us through your project.
Yeah, okay. So this is Matt Sibilia, the architect of the project. And just a quick overview of what we're proposing. So it's a 4-unit, 3-story apartment building. Unit 1 is about 1,300 square feet, has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The entrance to Unit 1 is on the ground level facing the back of the existing building.
Sorry,
three and
might I
four.
suggest that let's start with a bigger overview, like where is this project? What's next to it? Site photos of context, that kind of information is pretty key right now.
Oh, okay. So we're on West Olivo Street. Maybe the owner could key in on a little bit of what the neighborhood is.
Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, please.
This is Steve Johnson, owner of the property. Located close to Cottage Hospital and fronts onto West Los Olivos. On the southerly side, there is Mission Creek and Highway 101. To the northerly side is 13 condos owned by Westmont College for faculty housing. There's an existing structure, 2-bedroom house, approximately 1,000 square feet. And our proposal is to add the 4 units behind the existing structure, converting the existing structure to accessory use.
Okay. That's helpful. Do you have photos of the surrounding area?
We do. I'm not sure who controls what's being displayed, but there's the site plan, site survey, and there's a site plan showing the basic parking level behind the existing structure.
What? Oh, fuck, really? Oh.
All right, we've got somebody who doesn't realize their audio is on. And who is controlling the display?
So you can speak directly to Ted here and he can help guide you.
Okay.
Yes,
Ted?
so Mr. Johnson, Timmy Bolton, the associate planner, is controlling the plans. So you can direct him to scroll to different sheets on the plan set and move through the photos. And
There was a photo page. I think that's probably
all right,
appropriate.
it looks like we Okay, yeah, go ahead. We have, I believe we have photos to show in a separate document.
There's photos. So the photo in the upper left shows the existing house and the larger 13-unit condo project to the northerly side. The middle top, again, the photo, there's top right is looking towards the rear of the existing house. Middle left is looking back into the deep lot. Middle right, again, looking at the back of the existing house. Lower left is looking at the back of the existing house. Lower middle is a panorama view, a sweep of the existing house, large project to the north, a storage shed that is scheduled to be demolished. And the last photo is I walked over to the adjacent Westmont project and took a shot of the existing house. 6-foot redwood fence that is on the property line. Here are some views of neighbors. Neighbor to the south at I think 517 or 519 Los Olivos, and looking across the street from the front yard of the property, looking to the south, there's a looks like wood trim apartment to the left. That's another panorama view at the bottom of the, I think that's the bottom, unless you can scroll up. I can't tell if there's photos, no, because that's the only photo, that panorama shot looking from south to north across the street. Mostly one-story structures, some with additions in the rear. The apartment to the far left is obviously two-story and
Okay, great. Let's move on to the architecture, et cetera.
Is Matt available to speak, or I can also describe that
Yeah.
if you prefer. Matt, you're ready?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah, so the building itself that we're proposing is 3 stories, 4 units. The first unit is at the front of the building, so it has a ground level entrance. And that unit is about 1,300 square feet, it's 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Then the units 2, 3, and 4 are about 1,400 square feet each. And they have 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. And the entrance to these units is on the left side, up some stairs to the second level of the building. So there's a couple of different sets of stairs that go up to the second level, and that's how you enter those units. Each unit has their own private balconies. We're proposing 8 parking spaces. The parking spaces are under units 2, 3, and 4 behind the first floor entrance to unit 1. The 4-unit apartment is placed in the back of the property behind the existing single-level building that is to remain. The exterior finish of the building consists of stucco composed horizontal lap siding. The roof is asphalt shingles, and the windows are vinyl. That's about all I have to say on that, on the building.
Can we go to the elevations and take us through the heights, et cetera, and other details?
The overall, yeah, so the overall height is 31 feet 4 inches. First floor is 8 feet. First 2 floors are 8 feet. The third floor is a 9-foot ceiling. You can see some of the balconies and where we go over the parking area and on the second floor. In the back, on the back elevation, there's a large storage area. The lower gable roof. We were thinking about like exposed.
Can we zoom back up?
Tail.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
On the left side elevation on the second floor, you can see where we have the balconies on the second floor. Cantilever out a little bit. You can see where we put in some horizontal lap siding, some stucco, a couple of different colors on the stucco. And the rafter tails are exposed. Some corbels on the gable.
When you say left side, what orientation is this?
The left side, is that the north side?
North side, okay.
I think that's about it for the architectural details.
Okay, do you want to, would you like to add anything else, or does that conclude your presentation? Do you want to move to any landscape?
Chuck,
Yeah, sure. If you'll move to the L sheets, I only have one sheet. It's at the preliminary level. Right off the bat, the very dark blue. Sometimes I guess when you save to PDF, it turns your graphic symbols to not acceptable. But the big blue L-shaped thing is artificial turf. So the thinking is for the habitability of the situation, if there's kids or anything, there is a place, not perfect, but there is a place to the south side and the east side to where there's a little bit of, place for people to go. In the front, that's a one-story building. So we're staying in that small scale residential scale that is seen along the street front. And that's really what the public sees. And then in the back, just kind of taking care of things. I'm trying to get some shade trees along the south side, replacing a big oak or wanting to get a big oak in at some point. That's the southeast corner. There's some really tight spaces to where really the only vertical element we can get in is a palm without heavy maintenance problems later. And then, as I always do, just real long-term thinking. These are tough things that, will go for a long time with not really that great a maintenance. So that's my thought. That's all.
Okay. Anything else to add?
Not from me,
Project,
no.
This project team?
I could add one comment.
Okay.
The structure is based on a existing structure, and that provides a very large economic benefit to me as the developer. And there's a photo of the existing structure that's included in our submission. The existing structure is not in the county of Santa Barbara.
Owen, I do have one other thought when you have a moment. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we've received a letter from the neighbor to the north about they'd rather not touch their existing fence. That existing north property line fence is on their side. So they've asked us not to touch that. And we've got a note on that. And in the subsequent drawings, we won't be depending on that.
Okay. Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay. Then let's open public comment. If we could, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. At this time, we can open up this item to public comment. So if you'd like to give an oral public comment, please click the hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel as shown on screen. Currently, Mr. Chair, I don't see any attendees in the audience. So I'll just have Mary confirm whether we received any written public correspondence.
Thanks, Ted. We did receive one letter from, I believe it was Randy Jones. Let me double check that. Yeah, Randy Jones.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you, Mary.
thank you.
And I still don't see any attendees, so we can move on to questions.
Okay, so we'll close public comment and move on to questions. Who would like to start? Mr. Watkins, you want to start with questions?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Would the applicant mind going back, I don't know if you have an aerial map or some photos, and walk us through what the adjacent surrounding parcel structures are in terms of height?
I believe I could do that based on the photos. So to the, I'll say to the north side of the building, you see the three structure condos of and to the south side, which you also see in this photo, you see a one-story, I believe it's a duplex, but I won't swear to that. It might be a house. But it is one story, detached garage and back. If we can show the buildings across the street, they're pretty much one story. There is a two-story apartment. If you look at the bottom panorama photo, farthest to the left, the wood-like siding is a two-story apartment. Hope that addressed your question.
Thank you. So it seems like, do you have a, can we go back maybe to the cover sheet, Timmy, and where there's the assessor's parcel map or a vicinity map? Awesome, thank you. Do you mind zooming in on that? Thank you. So real quick, it says Cabrillo Street on your map. That's not accurate though, right? Is that Castillo Street or?
It's not Cabrillo.
Right.
If it says Cabrillo, that is an error. Wait a minute, Castillo. Yes, that should say
Okay.
Castillo.
So then, based on this map, would you say that the immediately surrounding parcels are mostly 1- and 2-story buildings? Is that, except for that 3-story one that's directly next to you guys?
That would be correct. 1- and 2-story, except for the immediate adjacent neighbor.
And that's to the north, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. And then, can you or Mr. McClure walk through the open spaces that you guys are providing on site, whether it's through landscaping at the ground level or through the decks or patios, please?
Private.
I can go ahead and with the there isn't a lot of opportunity, but see the very heavy blue is an artificial turf. So that's an area for people to go. And you'll notice at the southeast corner, there's a patio with some benches, and that's a place for people to kind of hang out. On the north east corner, there's a little gravel area that we could change to turf, but that would be a little place for kids to play, or a little, I don't know, you could do a little something there. But that's what we're proposing.
Okay. And then I take it with the design team, you guys are offsetting that by providing common open spaces or decks for your units?
The decks, the private open space requirement is met by the decks facing to the north.
Can we
There
see
are
those on
also decks facing to the south, but they are smaller and not particularly suitable for open space because of exposure to freeway noise.
So then have you guys vetted your private open space requirements yet? And do you have those met with these balconies and decks to the north? Or is that still in
Yes.
progress?
The decks to the north meet the private open space requirement.
Okay.
And we also meet the 15% open yard requirement.
Thank you.
That's shown on the site plan.
Thanks. And then forgive me if I'm not seeing it right away, but is it accurate to say that each unit has its own balcony right now?
That is correct.
Okay. And then with your glazing, you had mentioned you guys want to go with vinyl doors and window units for all the new development. Is there a reason for that?
Probably that's what was used on the original structure. I'm not especially married to that requirement, but the immediate answer would have been that what was used on the original structure.
Okay. And then the other materials, if I remember from the presentation, it was a mixture of plaster and then board and bat siding. Is that correct?
Correct. Is it possible to find the photo of the existing structure? I'm pretty sure it was part of the submission. Maybe it's on the cover page. I believe it's on the cover page. You might have to blow it up. There you go. In the upper, yes, if that can be there, to give you a good sense of the materials.
Okay. But you're saying this isn't, when you say an existing structure, is this on the property right now, or is this something you're trying to mimic that you found in another city?
I own this property. It's in San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
And I'm familiar with the architect, and they agreed to work with me on a project here in Santa Barbara.
Cool. So this siding on this structure up in Slow, do you remember, is it true wood siding or is it a fiber cement siding that you're using for the boards?
I'm quite sure it's fiber cement.
Okay.
But I'm certain that's what I would prefer to go with. It's much more durable.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay, Mr. Six, questions?
Yeah, I see if we go to the site survey that, and maybe it's in the photographs that were recently submitted, there are some burnt umber brown circles unidentified, and the other circles are identified as existing trees. What are the large circle? Yes, thank you. And then there's another one up here. So are those existing trees that are going to be removed?
They are stumps. They are trees that were removed by the previous owner. I purchased the property about 8 months ago.
Okay, thank you. The obvious question to me is, these existing there's, the whole front, well, I guess it's the presently used as a house or a dwelling. The existing building is to be converted into storage. And then you also have large, I guess it's a new storage area in the back. What is the function of all that storage area?
Well, the storage in the rear is most accessible, and I envision that as bicycle parking, secure bicycle parking, and other stuff. There's no garages. These are, carports. And the neighbors to the north, the 13 units, they have garages, which I have observed to be packed with stuff. And my experience is residents will, if you give them storage, they'll make good use of it.
Okay, and that also is your logic on the front building?
Pretty much. I'm maxed out on the ADU program with the 4 units, so it can't be a residence, the structure in front. But by retaining it, it somewhat preserves the character of the neighborhood. And again, I have no doubt that I will do I'm going to partition it. The 2 bedrooms I will rent out separately, and I have no doubt that the residents will pay an extra $100 a month for the use of that extra storage. I haven't quite determined what I would do with the remaining space, but I'm pretty sure I can come up with a good use.
So if you're using at least the rear new storage for bicycles, why do you also have to include bicycle lockers, kind of collecting area along the northern face of the garage? Those are bicycle lockers, no?
If they're lockers, it's probably because, in my experience, you can't provide enough bicycle parking. It gets consumed, and if there's an opportunity to use some additional space for bicycle parking, I didn't have a better use for it. That space, it's under the balconies. What else propose? I'm open. We don't. They're not needed because bicycle parking is going to be in the rear. That's what people will use.
All right, thank you. And we don't have any photos if this is visible from the highway, do we?
Not at this time. I could come back with drone photos at the next review.
So is it or isn't it visible from?
I would think it's not particularly visible because there's a sound wall and there is vegetation. But if you are driving in an effort, I'm sure you'd notice it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cunningham, you have any questions?
Yes, can we go to the, I guess, survey again, please? Site survey.
The second page. There it is.
So the oak tree at the far south end of the building or the site, you're proposing to remove that and basically put a storage building in that location. Have you run that past city staff, Barbara Shelton in particular, with regard to mitigating the loss of the biomass of that tree?
I haven't raised that issue with her, but I was told I could remove that tree right now. I don't need a permit to remove that tree. And in fact, the previous owner did remove 2 oaks as shown by those 2 brown circles.
Yeah, I was looking at Google Earth earlier today, and that tree that was removed earlier was magnificent. That's a shame. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, Mr. Black, any questions?
No questions right now.
Okay, Mr. Olson?
Yes, could we go back to the plan that showed the bicycle storage on the back side of the garage?
A little farther over.
Okay, I couldn't read it in the small scale before. I thought it said 14 inches, but it says 74 inches. So that's my only question.
Okay. Are there anyone else with questions?
Chair Moore?
I have yes, who's that?
That's Mr. Whalen.
Oh, yes, please. Questions?
Yeah. One small question on a drawing convention. I believe it's on the 2nd floor. Yes, if you could zoom in between unit 2 and 3. Yes, this is visible. Thank you. There appear to be 2 lines separating the balconies. What's going on there? those things?
If Matt is still here to comment, I believe those are privacy screens so that each
Yeah.
balcony will be somewhat private.
Yeah,
Probably-
I was thinking there'd be some kind of a privacy screen between the two balconies.
And then between the two screens is just a void of some kind?
Common access or? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay,
question.
very
Possibly an area where just a common area.
Common.
Very minor. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. My questions are, so since we're on the second floor here, if you pan down, directly down from there. So at the very bottom of the page there, running off the sheet, what is that rectangle there?
That's a roof that covers some of the structural framing. It's, so because we're going over the top of the covered parking area. So there's a couple of columns down there at the very bottom of that rectangle. And we put a shed roof over the top and stucco the columns and that's what that is.
Okay. So you've kind of created a bit of a podium situation then. It's not fully covered, but you essentially drive into a podium situation, park, and then you go up your stairs to your unit.
Yeah, the driving area is partially covered, and then the parking spaces are covered.
Okay. Tell me about, so on the south face of the podium, it's mostly open. Is that a low wall, or is that, because I don't see anything on the elevation, or is that like a curb, or what are we seeing?
So like the right side elevation?
Yeah. Right. Which is the south, or is that the east?
Southerly.
So it's darker because of the shadow. So it's open. It's totally open on that side until you get back to the bike storage area.
Okay.
And you can see where those columns are in the
And-
shed roof.
Yeah. Is that
That's a
housing
structural
something as
item.
well, or is it two columns?
Well, there's a couple of beams that come out to these columns. You can see the two columns there. So it's just kind of a structural item that we're trying to make it look like it belongs with the architectural design.
Uh-huh. And then to the right of that set of columns, it just free spans all the way over to the end of the garage there?
Yeah, there's another wall right there where the hand is, and so that's a supporting element there. Yeah, and it's basically a steel beam structure on that second floor over the top of the parking. So yeah, there's some pretty big spans.
Is there a reason that that's so wide open, or what's the thinking there?
It seemed like for parking it worked better that way, just more room for maneuvering the car.
Okay. All right. Okay, those are my questions. Let's go to comments. So if we could have Mr. McClure, if you could turn your web camera off, that way we can get board members up here. Okay, comments. Who would like to start us off?
I can start.
Okay, great, Mr. Olson.
So could we see the elevation that shows those bicycle protrusions on the backside of the garage?
I think that's it. The left side elevation is it.
So I don't see them.
Mr. Chair and Leon, I think, at least in my packet, there was a 3D study. I think it's, what, sheet 5.1.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think the bicycle things are there, but it gives you a little better concept of the three-dimensionality of this thing.
Right.
Mr.
So
Uh,
they're
my-
they're on the plan, but they're not on the elevations?
That's correct.
And you've
My
also
assumption-
said, you,
Those are pre-manufactured bike lockers.
correct,
They're not part of the structure.
I see. And do they attach to the building?
No.
Okay. Okay, that's my question, that's my comment. I really don't have a comment.
Okay. All right. How about Mr. Watkins? Why don't we start with your comments?
Thank you, Chair Moore. We can start on these renderings right here since it's helpful. I understand the program for what you're trying to achieve, but I think overall there's a lot of issues I have with it. I think the massing is very, very top heavy right now and very out of scale for the surrounding neighborhood. I live on another part of Los Olivos, probably about 6 or 7 blocks away. And so I walk this area a lot. And it's just hard to picture this development occurring in that particular end of the street where you're talking about, especially considering that most of the surrounding structures are 1 and 2 stories. I don't really see much step back happening off the frontage with your massing or off the rear, except for what's going to become, I think, storage. And the top right rendering that's shown on this sheet 5.1 right now, that's almost identical from what I see to the image that you provided from your the applicant's apartment complex up in San Luis Obispo, which is, I think, is the very last sheet of this set, if we can go to that real quick. At least it was the last sheet in the packet that I got. Yeah, thank you. The gable, the rake wall on the left and the shed on the right, the 4 windows at frontage, the soft story. I mean, it totally looks exactly the same to me. So it gives me the impression more that that program was lifted up and that architectural style and massing and heights and roofing configuration was all just reinserted into this site without really very much consideration for what's actually in the immediate surroundings. So I have I have an issue finding this being compatible. And massing, it's lifted up with this soft story, and then you have these heavy elevations up above, which I think it kind of throws off the human scale as well too. So I don't see a lot of engagement ground level, and I think that's also shown pretty well on your. We can go to, I guess, the landscape plan if we can real quick. It just doesn't leave very much. Thank you. It doesn't leave a lot of good open space usable for the inhabitants. I think, you have that 10-foot strip running on the bottom, which is, it's helpful, but, with 3 stories up above you, I don't see people using a 10-foot wide by, however, 60 feet long that is or something as really as an open space. I think it's just going to get overlooked, especially because you have to go through, it looks like either the meters or the trash cans to get to it. And then you have this tucked behind 3 stories, you have this open space in the bottom right corner, which I think is probably southeast. And so I just don't see that being very usable. I don't think that's a good use of open space for the site. I understand your private outdoor spaces up above, but I think at ground level, the southeast and northeast corner of this development just doesn't offer very much good usable space that's actually ever going to get used by inhabitants. And you have a lot of space here, and I think that was evidence in your presentation that you have so much left over that you guys are trying to fill in spaces for storage. So I would invite you to look back into the program and reuse some of that existing front structure for one of your units, or two of them if you can. I'll let you decide how you reorganize a program, but I think overall, an attempt needs to get made to refine the massing so it doesn't look like it was just cherry picked from another area, but it actually reflects more accurately the surrounding community's height and scale and massing patterns. It also will lend itself, I think, to more usable and more engageable open space, which will in turn provide a more human scale to this development. And I think removing these open spaces, these common open spaces out of the back of the properties and pushing them to the front, I think is a lot more effective. There's, I think, an overabundance of storage that you can see, which is never a bad thing. I think it's good you guys can actually work in your design the storage, but it's laying out for these really odd portions of your project. I think, the back storage, it looks tacked on to the very end of your development and your renderings. And then, as Chair Moore pointed out, there's leftover odd columns that pop up, and you're having to hide parts of your massing with these weird roof appendages, or you have these very long expanses of free-floating open spaces without any structure coming down and catching the ground again. So it looks like it's floating, and it looks way too much massing to be floating on such a few point loads coming down to ground level. So I would really ask you to kind of think about how you're engaging back at ground level with the site for human consideration and scale. And it'll also lend itself to, I think, sculpt a little bit of that massing a little bit more so it just doesn't appear as blocky and heavy, because I wrote down some of my first impressions where bulk is heavy. If we can go back to the elevations real quick, I think you're calling it right elevation. Yeah, thank you. Those little pop-outs that are happening at ground level, which I think we're capturing with those columns that you're discussing with Chair Moore, and then at the second level to the page left of that elevation, there's this little smaller gable pop-out that's happening right there. And those, yeah, thank you. Those elements just look tacked on. They look very small in scale to the overall massing, especially at that elevation. So I think that's hard. I know you are doing some push and pulls along that frontage, and it's starting to help, I think, a little bit, but it just still looks very heavy. And yeah, it just looks very out of scale and I think out of style for what that area is. I think you guys got to look at that a little bit more. With windows, I personally, for such a big amount of windows too, I think you should look at some variation to happen. I think this elevation really demonstrates it. The window sizes look pretty uniform. I think that would be something that could help the apparent heaviness of your massing by starting to change your glazing patterns, making some bigger and wider, or adding smaller series of windows together and clustering where you can to create a little bit more interest. And personally, I think vinyl's not the choice to go with this kind of development. I know economically it's probably great, but the surrounding area, I'm gonna guess, is probably either wood or clad windows is probably the more dominant material for glazing. And yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that for right now. Those are my comments.
Okay, Mr. Six.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a terribly unfortunate project. I understand that Santa Barbara needs inexpensive housing, and any dollar saved by the developer perhaps would pass on to the rents, but sticking this pre-existing package into this site and abandoning valuable square footage for storage on either end, it might be acceptable in San Luis Obispo, but the massing of this is terribly awkward with the holes and large cantilevers and structures sticking out of the massing to hold up the back end of the parking. This building and what's ever developed here is going to be here for 50, 75 years or more, influence the nature of this neighborhood for that long. And the quick buck or the, you know, convenience of sticking this already determined project into this is not appropriate. And I think David has gone through some details on the awkwardness, but you know, there's terrible awkwardness of getting to your units, squeezing through the northern area past bicycle lockers. The logic of, you know, filling up these existing valuable real estates in the front of that front property of an existing house just by abandoning it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I would suggest a total redo and find a design that's appropriate to the site. That's my comments.
Okay, Mr. Whalen?
Yes, I would agree with both Member Watkins and Member Six on the overall assessment of the project. Seems to me, though, that the massing of the upper two floors is varied and on its way to something decent, but there's a total disconnect between the second and third floors and the ground floors. And it's exacerbated by these wimpy little posts that are in this elevation that we're looking at over on the far right, where we have a tiny little sort of roof jutting out to capture one post. I mean, it just looks spindly and weird. If you were to develop this design more, I would suggest more connectivity between the ground floor and the second floor, developing some of these columns into walls, framing an opening that the cars would drive into. I'm not sure it could be salvaged because of the other problems with circulation and identity and safety for transiting from your car up to your unit. I would underline Mr. Watkins' comment about the window variation, perhaps using something that's a little more in character with this idea of a bungalow that you seem to be going after, would say with a 4/1 window. And I don't have any problem with the massing really, because of the new development adjacent seems very comfortable on its size. And I would encourage the design to refine their detailing to a level that that adjacent project meets. They did a very fine job on weaving all the parts together, where this just looks like it's barely thought out. Thank you.
Okay. Did we get comments from Mr. Black and Mr. Cunningham?
I don't have anything to add. I would agree with the comments that have been made.
Okay, Mr. Cunningham?
I would like to add a couple of things. I think the storage building on the far end it seems more like a rental opportunity for the owner than anything else. And I think the building floating above the void is very unfortunate. I think this building needs garages, and I think that storage building needs to be eliminated from the site. The existing oak tree respected as an element of the landscape. Planting a new, 48-inch box oak tree is going to take 50 years for it to replace the tree that's being removed or proposed for removal. I agree with all the other comments made. I think this is building, it's poor utilization of the site, and it needs to be looked at seriously. Nothing more. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Olson, do you have? Oh, you're still muted.
There've been some suggestions that the project hasn't been designed for the site. And perhaps if you reconsider designing the project around the site, I would urge you to include that front building as a livable unit. And which might mean that you have to take one unit away from the other end of the development. But it seems such a waste to the neighborhood and to the use to not use that unit somehow as a living unit.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? I don't have anything more to add to that discussion. We just need a motion.
I can try to craft one, Chair Moore.
Great.
It's okay. Okay. Let's start there. The board finds the utilization of the site poorly developed and asks the applicant to restudy spatial orientation to alleviate massing and improve open space and circulation throughout the site. The board also asks that the applicant respect some of the existing landscaping and seek to maintain the existing oak tree. The overabundance of storage space is concerning in that it leads to an apparent heaviness of bulk and massing for the proposed development. While the second and third stories of the project are generally acceptable in terms of overall mass, there lacks a cohesive engagement between the proposed development and the ground level. The board asked the applicant to restudy the ground level design, especially around the openings, in that existing columns and brace walls be better integrated into the proposed design to reduce the appearance of tacked on additions or undersized openings along the parking lot soft story. Details such as enclosing the existing post within wing walls or adding additional detailing or architectural features to reduce the apparent openness at ground level is greatly encouraged. The existing front unit and proposed rear storage units should be further studied to alleviate the apparent height and scale of the overall development at the upper levels. The board requests the applicant further study glazing patterns and materials to better reflect the proposed architectural style, as well as better reflect the design patternings of the surrounding community. The board discourages the use of applying a design from another city into the proposed site and asks that the applicants take more effort in exploring the existing typologies found in the surrounding neighborhood and work through details, massing, and apparent scale to better integrate the design into the site. The board finds existing detailing fairly thought out at this time and looks forward to the applicants further developing detail on the next iteration. Details would include eave conditions, trim details at corners and around doors and windows, siding transition details, and any other details the applicants feel would enhance the quality of design. I'll add this. I didn't bring it up in my comments, but I'll finish off with my motion, and I'll leave it up to the board members to feel if they agree with this one. There is a poor arrangement of open space throughout the site, and I feel that's there's too much circulation. There's too much circulation right now that could be better arranged to provide better uses of open space and more engageable open spaces. So I don't know if the second or the motion agrees with that, or if the board itself feels that that's an appropriate comment. I'm happy to reword that.
I'll second that, and I agree with that last comment. I would like you to reinforce your comment on, you said restudy the existing building proposed for storage and this rear storage unit. I think what I would like to strengthen that to say incorporate those two structures into the living areas of the program.
I agree with that. Mary, if you could change that word from restudy to incorporate, please.
Incorporate into the living areas.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Not for me.
No? Okay, let's take our vote, please.
All right, this is Mary. I will take the roll call vote. We have Chair Moore.
Yes.
Could we read it?
Sure. Give me one moment. All right. So the motion is to continue indefinitely with the following comments. The board finds the utilization of the site poorly developed. Study the orientation to alleviate the massing and improve the open space and circulation throughout the site. The applicant should respect the existing landscaping and seek to maintain the oak tree. The overabundance of storage space is concerning in that it leads to an apparent heaviness of bulk and massing for the proposed development. While the second and third stories are generally acceptable in terms of overall mass, their lack of cohesive engagement between development and there is a lack of cohesive engagement between development and ground level, and incorporate storage into the living areas, restudy the ground level design, especially the openings. The existing columns and brace walls should be better integrated into the design to reduce the appearance of tacked on additions, undersized openings along the parking lot story. Details such as the enclosed posts, wing wall, or adding additional detailing should be included to reduce the apparent openness of the ground level. The existing front unit and proposed rear storage units should be incorporated into the living area and the apparent height and scale of the overall development at the upper levels. The board requests the applicant to study glazing patterns and materials to reflect the proposed architectural style, as well as reflect design patternings of the surrounding community. The board discourages the use of applying the design from other cities to the proposed site, explore existing typologies found within the neighborhood, and work through details, massing, and apparent scale to better integrate the design into the site. The board finds that the existing detailing needs to be more developed, include eave conditions, rim details at corners and around doors and windows, siding transition details, and any other details the applicant feels would enhance the quality of the design. There's a poor arrangement of the open space throughout the site and too much circulation that could be better arranged in order to use the space in a better manner and make it more engageable.
Just had two small comments, Mary. It was one of the last comments about detailing, and I think the word would be, instead of rim at corners, it would be trim at corners.
All right. Got it.
And
Thank
then-
you.
Thanks. And then the other one, I think we have to be careful about the comment about converting storage to living areas, because that lends itself to be a more programmatic question. So maybe I could say the board asks that these structures proposed as storage be engaged with more habitable space to relieve massing at upper levels.
All right.
Does the seconder and the rest of the board feel okay with that?
Yeah, that's fair.
I have proposed storage structures to be engaged with more habitable space to relieve massing at upper levels.
Right.
Okay, are we good with all that?
Yes.
All right, let's take our vote.
Okay, we have Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Cunningham,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
No.
Board Member Watkins,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
All right, Leon, did you want to mention why you voted no, or you?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I think that the motion, while I agree with much of what is said in it, seems to encourage the continued development of this plan, which was not developed in accordance with the site. And I think it could be, and I think by the development and use of that residence in the front could open up some space elsewhere on the lot. And I think that the motion doesn't encourage that strong enough.
Okay, well, it's certainly an option for the applicant to pursue, I think. So, thank you for that.
If I may, I agree with Leon. My inference of the motion was that we would see a substantially revised project.
Yeah.
I hope that's what the applicant takes away from this, because if it does come back substantially unchanged, I will not be able to support it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to the applicants for hanging in there with us. And that concludes our agenda for the evening. So we're going to adjourn our November 16th meeting. Thank you very much.